Hello, and welcome to Opening Bars. Tubular Bells is Mike Oldfield's 1973 debut album, widely considered to be a groundbreaking 20th century recording. As for his influences, in a 2014 interview with The Guardian, Mike says, "I listened to Ravel, Rodelius, Bartók, Stravinsky, or it might be Stevie Wonder or Led Zeppelin. It didn't matter. It was just music, vibrations in the air." By a fortunate twist of fate, William Friedman, who was looking for music for his upcoming movie, The Exorcist, happened to be visiting the Atlantic Records offices, put this album on a turntable, and was immediately taken with the introduction to Part 1. You might wonder why he responded so strongly to this piece, and why it remains so solidly bound to the movie, although the introduction only features briefly in 2 scenes. Let's consider that question later, but first, let's examine the music more closely first. Here we are using the treble clef for both the right hand and the left hand. There is no key signature, and the initial time signature is 7/8. That means that there are 7 pulses of eighth notes in each measure. Let's add up all of the notes we can see here, not including the octave doubling. We have 13 E's, 5 B's, 4 A's, 4 C's, 2 D's, and 2 G's. While the most abundant note is the E, the centering tone for the passage sounds like an A. And when we add up all of the notes, and despite the absence of an F, we can derive an A natural minor scale, or Aeolian mode if you wish, with the E then forming a dominant scale degree pedal tone. So we can mark a lowercase I for the entire opening and a PP on the initiating E. There's nothing really more to add, unless you wish to label the non-chord notes outside of A minor, like the G, B, and the D, which might suggest a 7 chord over a ghost A, but I don't think that's really necessary here. It's easy to see that every note is an eighth note. There are 2 identical rhythmic patterns of 7 plus 7 notes. This is the first 7, and here is the second 7. To make a complete 14-note first phrase. And now, here it is again, but this time the second iteration adds 2 eighth notes, this E and B, which, when you hear it, makes your brain think that the pattern is starting all over again, but it doesn't. And even after your brain is tricked repeatedly after each series, and even though your brain now knows it's coming, it still feels like an uncomfortable mental surprise. Take a moment to look closely at the fingering I've added. I had marked the score with fingerings before I began playing this, and then surprised myself to notice that that's not what I was actually using. I then had to carefully reconsider why I was using certain fingers on certain notes, and came up with what you see on the page now. For me, it provides for the most accuracy, precision, and comfort. This is an important lesson for you to consider as well, to continually assess your own performance needs against your intellectual assessments and adjust as necessary. It will improve the quality of your practice sessions and help your playing immensely to be physically and mentally prepared as you work. Let's play this slowly now, hands separately, with a click track of eighth notes. You won't be able to see me do it here, but perhaps you can play along using the fingering provided. Now let's look at this at pitch. You can see here that I've written both hands in the treble clef, each is exactly the same, but I've provided a notation to play the left hand up an octave and the right hand up 2 octaves at the 15th. I'm going to use the damper pedal sustained throughout. This works on the piano I'm using in these upper registers. Notice that if we were to play this down the octave, it sounds muddled, but because the higher notes decay so quickly on their own, it actually works above. There's really not anything else to it. Practice slowly, working your way up to tempo, being as consistent, even in tempo and weight, in an unbroken loop. Be aware that your fingerings might change on their own. Try to notice that at the slower practice tempos. So, I wonder why the movie director for The Exorcist picked this piece. Well, I think for starters, it's in a minor key, the Aeolian mode, or natural minor scale if you prefer, which is often associated with a darker, less joyful tone. It also has uncommon time signatures for popular music, with 2 similar motifs that are ever so slightly uneven when orally compared with one another, which makes for a distinctly unsatisfying musical response from our brains, which usually warm to regular patterning instead. It's interesting too that the placement of these notes in the upper registers make for a very colorless and somewhat cold resonance, the notes themselves having a very quick decay and sounding like little knives incessantly hammering and stabbing away at the keys. And finally, a most crucial element is the pedal tone, which is on E, not rooted on the stronger tonic A. It is also unsustained and executed in an almost Morse code type manner, which here is a rhythmic example of what is known as the stopped Anapestic Beat, a short, long, irregular pattern. I'm going to play it for you now here, just the E without the other notes. This pattern has been studied and shown to make muscles in the human body actually contract, in this case spasmodically, and over a time period may weaken the body's overall physical response system. In fact, it could be said to potentially make one feel somewhat powerless, which when placed in context of the movie plot is, well, very, very creepy. Some people also believe, in a biblical context, that these stopped anapestic beats, often associated with and heard in rock music, is the gateway through which Satan enters. So, although William Friedman may not have intellectualized this, he may have felt, as perhaps we do, that this fragment provokes a very unsettling physical and emotional response, which is exactly what he was looking for. I hope you enjoyed your lesson today. Remember, don't just play notes. Make music. Until next time, thanks for listening.